I saw my husband at the airport, and for 3 perfect seconds my heart filled with love. He was standing near the exit doors about 50 feet ahead of me. He was holding flowers, beautiful red roses wrapped in clear paper with a white ribbon. I'd caught an earlier flight home from Denver, landing a full day before Philip expected me. I was going to surprise him, but somehow he'd found out. Somehow he knew I'd be on this flight, and he'd come to surprise me back. That's exactly the kind of thing Philip would do, romantic, thoughtful, sweet. I was pulling my carry-on through the arrivals area, about to call out his name, about to run to him, when I noticed something wrong. His expression. He was scanning the crowd with this look on his face, eager, excited, almost desperate, but his eyes passed right over me. He wasn't looking at me, he was looking for someone else. Before I could process what that meant, I heard running footsteps behind me. A woman rushed past me so fast I had to step aside to avoid being knocked over. She had long auburn hair that flew behind her as she ran. She was wearing a yellow sundress, and she was running straight toward my husband. "Philip!" she shouted. My husband's face transformed. Pure joy, pure relief. His whole expression lit up in a way I'd never seen before. The woman didn't slow down. She didn't stop for a polite hug. She ran full speed and leapt into his arms. Her arms wrapped around his neck, her legs wrapped around his waist, and Philip caught her like it was the most natural thing in the world, like he'd done it 100 times before. I stood frozen in the middle of the airport terminal. People flowed around me on both sides, rushing to catch flights or meet loved ones. But I couldn't move. I could only stand there and watch. Philip spun her around. The bouquet of roses was crushed between their bodies. The woman's face was buried in his neck, and I could see her shoulders shaking. She was crying. Philip set her down gently, but kept his hands on her shoulders. He pulled back to look at her face, and his expression was so tender it made my chest ache. He said something I couldn't hear over the noise of the airport. The woman laughed and cried at the same time. She said something back. Then Philip pulled her into another embrace. This time I could see his face over her shoulder. His eyes were closed. His expression was pure happiness mixed with relief. He'd never looked at me quite like that. Not even on our wedding day. My hand gripped the handle of my suitcase so tightly my knuckles turned white. My brain was screaming at me to move, to walk over there and demand to know what was happening, to ask who this woman was and why my husband was holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world, but my body wouldn't respond. I just stood there watching my marriage fall apart in the middle of an airport terminal. The woman said something else and Philip laughed. Actually laughed. Then he tucked a strand of her auburn hair behind her ear. That gesture, that intimate, familiar gesture, something inside me finally broke through the shock. I turned sharply and walked in the opposite direction. My suitcase wheels rattled on the tile floor. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to get away from them before they saw me, before Philip saw me standing there like an idiot while he held another woman. I found a bathroom and locked myself in a stall. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn the lock. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Philip. "Hey babe, hope the conference is going well. Miss you. Can't wait for you to come home tomorrow." Tomorrow? He thought I was coming home tomorrow, which meant he never expected me to see this. To see him with her. I stared at the text message, and something inside me went very cold. 5 days before I saw my husband at the airport with another woman, I was packing for a business trip to Denver. It was Monday morning. I was in our bedroom, folding clothes into my suitcase. Philip was downstairs making breakfast. I could smell coffee and hear him moving around the kitchen. Everything seemed normal. Everything seemed fine. We'd been married for 6 years. I still loved him deeply. Most days, I looked at him and felt lucky that he'd chosen me. But lately, something had felt off. I couldn't name it exactly, couldn't point to one specific thing and say, "That's the problem." It was more like a collection of small things that added up to a feeling I couldn't shake. Philip's phone, for example. 2 months ago, he started taking it everywhere, and I mean everywhere, to the bathroom, to get the mail, to take out the trash. Like he couldn't be separated from it for even 2 minutes. He also started putting it face down on tables and counters. It used to sit face up. and I'd see notifications pop up. Normal stuff, work emails, news alerts, messages from his dad. But now the screen was always hidden. A few times over the past month, I'd walked into a room and watched Philip quickly switch screens on his phone, or close it completely and set it down like nothing was happening. "Who are you texting?" I'd ask. And he always had an answer. "Just work," or "my dad," or "college friend checking in." All reasonable explanations, all perfectly normal. But the pattern was what bothered me. Then there were the phone calls he took in another room. Just in the past few weeks, Philip's phone would ring, and he'd glance at the screen and say, "I should take this." Then he'd walk outside, onto the porch, or into his office with the door closed. It had happened at least 4 times that I'd noticed, maybe more when I wasn't home. Once, I asked him about it. "Who was that?" "Family member of a patient," he'd said. "Needed advice about therapy exercises, kind of private." That made sense. Philip was a physical therapist. Those calls weren't unusual. But 4 times in 1 month? I hadn't said anything more because I felt silly, paranoid, like I was turning into one of those suspicious wives who sees problems where none exist. Philip hadn't actually done anything wrong. He was still affectionate with me, still said he loved me every day, still made plans for our future, talking about the vacation we'd take next summer, the house projects we wanted to finish. But there was a distance that hadn't been there before, a distraction, like part of his mind was always somewhere else, even when he was sitting right next to me. The night before my trip, we were in bed. Philip was on his phone, scrolling through something. "What are you looking at?" I asked. "Just the news," he said. But when I glanced over at his screen, I saw him quickly close one app and open a news website instead. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, of course." He put the phone down and turned to me. "I'm going to miss you this week." "It's only 4 days." "I know, but still." He kissed me, and I tried to ignore the uneasy feeling in my stomach. The next morning, Philip helped me carry my suitcase to the car. At the airport drop-off, he kissed me goodbye. "Text me when you land," he said. "I will. Love you." "Love you too." I watched him drive away and tried to ignore the small voice in my head, asking why he seemed almost relieved I was leaving. The conference in Denver was typical. Long presentations, networking events, hotel meeting rooms. My colleague Beth was with me, and we sat through sessions together. On Wednesday evening, we were having dinner at the hotel restaurant when Beth asked, "How are things at home?" "Fine," I said automatically. Beth gave me a look. "Really, you seem distracted." I considered brushing it off. But Beth had been married for 12 years. Maybe she'd have perspective. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "How do you know if your husband is hiding something?" Beth's expression turned serious. "What makes you think Philip is hiding something?" I told her about the phone behavior, the private calls, the distraction. As I said it out loud, it sounded more significant than it had in my head. Beth was quiet for a moment. "Those could be signs of something, or they could be nothing. Has he given you any other reason not to trust him?" "No, that's why I feel crazy bringing it up." "Trust your gut, Nina," Beth said. "If something feels off, there's usually a reason." That conversation stuck with me for the rest of the night, and it would turn out Beth was right. Something was very, very off. On Thursday morning, I was sitting in a conference session when my phone buzzed with an email. The final day of the conference had been canceled. Some problem with the venue. Everyone could leave Thursday instead of Friday if they wanted. I immediately opened my airline app and searched for flights. There was one leaving Denver at 2 o'clock that would get me home by 6, a full day earlier than Philip expected me. My finger hovered over the book button. The practical part of my brain said this made sense. Why pay for another night in a hotel if the conference was over? Why not go home early? But there was another part of me, the part that had been worrying about Philip's behavior for weeks. That part saw this as an opportunity, a chance to come home when he wasn't expecting me, to see what my normal life looked like when I wasn't supposed to be there. I felt guilty even thinking that way. I wasn't the kind of wife who spied on her husband. I'd never checked his phone or followed him or questioned where he'd been, but Beth's words from last night kept echoing in my head. Trust your gut. I booked the flight. Beth found me in the hotel lobby an hour later as I was checking out. Leaving early? She asked. Conference is canceled. Figured I'd head home. Beth studied my face. Are you going to tell Philip you're coming home early? I hesitated. I don't know. Maybe I'll surprise him. That's one word for it, Beth said carefully. You think I shouldn't? I think you should do what feels right. But Nina, if you're hoping to catch him doing something wrong, ask yourself if you're ready for what you might find. I thought about that during the entire taxi ride to the airport. Was I hoping to catch Philip doing something wrong, or was I hoping to prove my worries were baseless? I honestly didn't know anymore. At the airport, I texted Philip. How's your day going? His response came quickly. Good, busy at work. How's the last day of the conference? I stared at that message. He thought I'd be in Denver all day today and all day tomorrow. He had no idea I was sitting in an airport about to fly home. I could tell him right now. Tell him the truth. Instead, I typed, long day ahead. Might not text much. No problem. Talk tonight? He replied. Sure. I put my phone away and boarded the plane. The flight felt endless. I sat in my window seat, watching clouds and trying not to imagine worst-case scenarios. What if Philip was having an affair? What if I got home and found something I couldn't ignore? We'd been married 6 years. I loved him. I thought he loved me, but love didn't prevent betrayal. Beth's ex-husband had loved her too, right up until she found out about his affair. The plane landed at 6:07 p.m. I grabbed my carry-on and headed toward the exit. I hadn't checked a bag, so I could go straight out and catch a taxi home. I was planning my approach, walk in the front door, see Philip's genuine reaction to my early arrival. Maybe my worries would disappear the moment I saw his surprised, happy face. I was walking through the terminal, pulling my suitcase behind me, when I saw someone I recognized, someone who shouldn't be here, Philip. He was standing near the doors about 50 feet ahead, holding a bouquet of red roses. My heart jumped. How did he know I'd be on this flight? I didn't tell him. Then warmth spread through my chest. He must have figured it out somehow. Checked my credit card, called the airline, something. It was exactly the kind of romantic gesture Philip would make. I was about to call his name when I noticed his face. He wasn't looking at me. His eyes were scanning the crowd, but they passed right over me like I was invisible. He was looking for someone, just not me. And then I saw exactly who he was looking for. I sat in that airport bathroom stall for 20 minutes, maybe longer. I couldn't tell. I kept trying to breathe, kept trying to think. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. Philip catching that woman in his arms. The way they held each other, the joy on his face. My phone buzzed. Another text from Philip. Conference going okay? You've been quiet today. My hands shook as I stared at the screen. He was texting me, probably from his car, probably sitting next to her. I couldn't go home, not yet. Not like this. I left the bathroom and kept my head down as I walked toward a different exit. I glanced back once and saw them in the distance, walking toward the parking garage. Philip's arm was around her shoulders. That image burned into my brain. I caught a taxi outside and gave the driver Fiona's address instead of my own. During the drive, I sat in the back seat staring at nothing. My mind kept replaying what I'd seen over and over. The flowers, the embrace, the intimacy. That wasn't a casual hug. That was love. I called Fiona from her parking lot. Nina, I thought you weren't back until tomorrow. Can I come up? My voice broke. I need to talk to you. Fiona must have heard something because she said immediately, Door's open, come up now. She was waiting in her doorway when I got off the elevator. One look at my face and she pulled me inside. What happened? I told her everything. The early flight, seeing Philip at the airport, the woman with auburn hair, the roses, the way they held each other like they'd done it 1,000 times. He's having an affair, I said, and saying it out loud made it real. Made it devastating. I started crying. Not gentle tears, big choking sobs that made it hard to breathe. Fiona held me and didn't say anything for a long time. When I finally calmed down, she asked, Did you see them kiss? No. But, Fiona, the way he looked at her, the way he held her, you don't do that unless. I couldn't finish the sentence. Did you confront them? No, they didn't see me. I left before they could. Good, Fiona said firmly. You need information before you confront him. What information? I saw what I saw. You saw your husband hug a woman at the airport. That's bad. I'm not saying it isn't. But you don't know who she is. You don't know the full story. The story seems pretty clear. Maybe, but before you blow up your marriage, you need facts. Who is she? How long has this been going on? You need to know exactly what you're dealing with. How do I get facts? Did you take a photo? Fiona asked. I shook my head. I'd been too shocked to think about pictures. Can you describe her? I described the woman, auburn hair, petite, late 20s, yellow sundress. What about Philip's phone? Have you ever looked at it? He password protected it 2 months ago. Fiona's expression said everything. That's convenient timing. He said it was for security. Nina, you need to look at that phone. You're his wife. You have a right to know the truth. I don't want to be that wife, the one who snoops and accuses. You saw him with another woman at the airport holding roses. You're past snooping. You're protecting yourself. My phone buzzed. A text from Philip. Haven't heard from you. Everything okay? My hand shook as I typed back. Sorry, conference ran late. About to grab dinner. Talk later? His response came immediately. Okay, love you. Those 2 words made me feel sick. I showed Fiona the text. Love you, she read aloud, her voice flat. While he was just at the airport picking up another woman. I set my phone down on Fiona's coffee table and looked at her. I don't know if I can do this, I whispered. Do what? Pretend everything's fine, go home tomorrow and act normal. Look him in the eye and not scream. You can, Fiona said, because you need answers, and to get answers, you need to be smart. I nodded, but I didn't believe her. I didn't know if I could be smart about this. I didn't know if I could be anything except heartbroken. I stayed at Fiona's apartment Thursday night. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Philip's face at the airport. That look of joy when the woman ran to him. By Friday morning, I'd made a decision. I was going to find out who she was before I confronted him. I needed facts, not just feelings. I told Philip I was taking a morning flight back to Denver. In reality, I went to a coffee shop 3 blocks from Fiona's apartment and opened my laptop. First, I logged into our phone account. Philip and I shared a family plan, which meant I could see his call history online. What I found made my stomach drop. For the past 2 months, there was one number Philip had called or texted almost every single day, sometimes multiple times. Some calls lasted 5 minutes, others over an hour. I didn't recognize the number. My hands shook as I copied it and ran a reverse phone lookup. The name that came back was Julia Brennan. I sat there staring at that name. Julia. The woman at the airport had a name now. She wasn't just some stranger anymore. She was Julia Brennan, and my husband talked to her every single day. I opened social media and searched for her name. Several profiles came up, but one made my heart stop. A woman with auburn hair, late 20s. The same woman from the airport. Most of her photos were private, but her profile picture showed her smiling at the camera. She was beautiful, young. Everything I suddenly felt like I wasn't. I created a fake profile, random name, random photo I found online. Then I sent Julia Brennan a friend request. She accepted within an hour. Now I could see more of her photos. There were pictures at coffee shops, at parks, at what looked like a gym. No photos with Philip, which was either good or very, very bad. But there were posts that caught my attention. From 3 months ago, hardest journey of my life, but I'm not giving up. From 2 months ago, some days are better than others. Grateful for the people who've stood by me. From 1 month ago, halfway through, I can do this. The posts were vague but emotional. What journey? Halfway through what? I screenshotted everything. Next, I checked our credit card statements, looking for hotel charges, jewelry, expensive dinners, evidence of an affair. What I found was different. Charges to medical facilities I didn't recognize, pharmacy charges, nothing obvious, but definitely things Philip had never mentioned. I saved copies of all of it. At 6 o'clock, I finally went home. I'd been texting Philip all day, pretending I was still in Denver, pretending everything was normal. The taxi pulled up to our house. Philip's car was in the driveway. Lights were on inside. I took a deep breath, grabbed my suitcase, and walked to the front door. Before I could get my keys, the door opened. Philip stood there smiling. "Welcome home." He pulled me into a hug, and I stood stiff in his arms. Every muscle in my body wanted to push him away and scream, to demand he tell me who Julia Brennan was. But I didn't. I hugged him back and said, "Good to be home." "How was the trip?" he asked, taking my suitcase. "Fine, long, I'm tired." "I made dinner, your favorite." He'd made dinner, probably feeling guilty. We ate together and Philip talked about his week, about patients at work, about normal everyday things. He didn't mention Julia, didn't mention going to the airport, didn't mention anything. And I sat there smiling and nodding while planning my next move. Tomorrow I was going to follow him. I was going to see where he went and who he saw. I was going to catch him with Julia and finally get the truth. Even if that truth destroyed me. Saturday morning, I told Philip I was meeting Fiona for brunch. Instead, I parked down the street from our house and waited. I felt ridiculous, like a character in a bad movie, sitting in my car spying on my own husband. But I needed to know the truth. Around 10 o'clock, Philip came out of the house carrying a shopping bag. He got in his car and drove off. I followed him, keeping a few cars between us. He drove across town to a neighborhood I didn't recognize. Older apartment buildings, tree-lined streets. He pulled up to a modest 3-story building and parked. I parked across the street and watched. Philip got out with the bag. I could see now it was from a pharmacy. He walked to the building entrance and pulled out a key. His own key. He let himself in like he'd done it 100 times. My heart sank. He had a key to this building. To her apartment. I sat in my car for an hour watching the building. Philip didn't come out. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I got out and walked across the street. The building had a directory by the entrance, but it only showed apartment numbers, not names. I didn't know which one was Julia's. Then I saw movement through a first-floor window. Philip. I moved closer, staying to the side where I couldn't be seen. Through the window, I could see into a small living room. Philip was sitting on a couch, and Julia was there, but not in his arms like at the airport. She was sitting in a recliner, and she looked different. Thinner, pale, tired. On the table between them were medicine bottles and medical supplies. I watched as Philip got up and went to the kitchen. He came back with water and pills. Julia took them, then leaned back and closed her eyes. Philip sat back down and pulled out his phone. My phone buzzed, a text from Philip. "Brunch going well?" He was texting me while sitting with her. The duplicity of it made my blood boil. I stared at my phone, then at the window. Then I did something impulsive. I called Julia's number, the one I'd found in our phone records. Through the window, I saw her phone light up on the table. Julia opened her eyes and reached for it. Philip glanced at the screen. Julia answered. "Hello?" Her voice sounded weak. I couldn't speak. My throat closed up. "Who is this?" Julia asked. I hung up. Through the window, I saw Julia looking at her phone, confused. Philip leaned over to look. They talked briefly. He looked concerned. I backed away from the window and returned to my car. I sat there trying to make sense of what I'd seen. Julia was sick. Philip was taking care of her. But why? Who was she to him? Then I saw the apartment door open. Philip came out, walked to his car, and made a phone call. His body language was tense, upset. After 5 minutes, he got in his car and drove away. I didn't follow him this time. Instead, I got out of my car and walked back to the building. I found the apartment I'd been watching and knocked on the door. I needed answers. If Philip wouldn't give them to me, maybe Julia would. There was a long pause. Then the door opened. Julia stood there looking even frailer up close. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "You're Nina," she said quietly. "How do you know my name?" Julia's eyes filled with tears. "I know everything about you. Philip talks about you all the time." Then she said something that changed everything. "I'm his sister." I stared at Julia, certain I'd misheard. "His sister?" "Yes, I'm sorry. I thought you knew about me." Julia stepped back from the door. "Please come in. We need to talk." I walked into the apartment in a daze. Philip never mentioned having a sister. In 6 years of marriage, he'd told me he was an only child. I don't understand, I said. Philip told me he didn't have siblings. Julia sat down slowly in the recliner. Even that small movement seemed to exhaust her. He told you that because our father asked him to. Because I asked him to. Why would you want him to pretend you don't exist? Julia looked down at her hands. I've been sick for a long time. Lupus, it's an autoimmune disease. I was diagnosed when I was 19. For years I was really sick, in and out of hospitals. But you're his sister, I said. That's not something you hide. Our mother died when I was 15, Julia said quietly. She had lupus too. It runs in families. When I got diagnosed, I saw what it did to our father. He'd already watched our mother die slowly. He couldn't handle watching me go through the same thing. I sat down on the couch, trying to process this. So you just disappeared? I moved away, told Philip to live his life and not worry about me. I didn't want to be the sick sister everyone pitied. For 10 years? Julia nodded. I was managing okay on my own, but 3 months ago, I had a major flare-up, ended up in the hospital. Philip found out because he's still my emergency contact. He dropped everything to help me. My mind flashed to 2 months ago, when Philip's behavior changed when the secret phone call started. He's been taking care of you, I said. Yes, he helped me find this apartment close to him. He takes me to treatments, brings me medicine. Julia's eyes filled with tears. He's been incredible, but I made him promise not to tell you until I was better. I didn't want you to meet me like this. The flowers at the airport, I whispered. I was coming back from a treatment center in California, a 6-week program. It was brutal, but I finished it. Philip wanted to pick me up himself. Everything clicked into place. The secret calls were about Julia's health. The pharmacy charges were her medications. The distance in Philip's behavior was guilt about lying to me. You thought he was having an affair, Julia said gently. I covered my face with my hands. I saw you at the airport. The way you jumped into his arms, I thought, I'm so sorry. I didn't think about how it looked. I was just so happy to see my brother. Before I could respond, the apartment door opened. Philip walked in and froze when he saw me sitting on the couch. Nina. The shopping bag in his hand fell to the floor. How did you? I followed you, I said. I saw you at the airport Thursday with Julia. I came home early and thought, my voice broke. I thought you were cheating on me. Philip's face went pale. Oh, God. Nina, no. He crossed the room and knelt in front of me. I'm so sorry. I wanted to tell you about Julia so many times, but I promised her I wouldn't. Why didn't you tell me from the beginning? I asked. Before we even got married. Because by the time we got serious, Julia and I hadn't spoken in years. She'd cut off contact. I thought I was respecting her wishes by not mentioning her. He looked at his sister. But when I found out how sick she was, I couldn't stay away. I made him keep it secret, Julia said. This is my fault. No, I said. This is on both of you. You should have trusted me with the truth. I looked at Philip. I'm your wife. We're supposed to face hard things together. Philip took my hands. You're right. I'm so sorry I made you doubt us. I need time to process this, I said. All the lies, the secrets, the sister I didn't know existed. I looked at Julia. But I want to get to know you. The real you. Julia smiled through her tears. I'd like that. I stood up. I'm staying at Fiona's tonight. I need space to think. I understand, Philip said, though his face showed how much it hurt. As I walked to the door, I turned back. Philip, I love you, but we need to rebuild trust, really rebuild it. I know, whenever you're ready. Over the next few weeks, Philip and I talked, really talked, about Julia, about the lies, about what marriage meant. Slowly, I forgave him. And slowly, I got to know Julia. She was funny and kind and fiercely independent despite her illness. I learned to see past the lupus to the person underneath. 6 months later, Julia's health had improved. The treatment worked. She wasn't cured, but she was managing. One evening, the three of us had dinner at our house. I watched Philip with his sister and saw the love there, the family I'd been robbed of knowing. Later, as we cleaned up, Philip put his arms around me. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For forgiving me, for accepting Julia, for being you." I turned in his arms. "I almost lost you over a misunderstanding." "No," Philip said firmly. "You almost lost me because I kept secrets. That's on me." We stood in our kitchen, and I thought about that day at the airport, how one moment had changed everything, how I'd been so certain of what I saw, but reality was completely different. Sometimes the worst day of your life leads you somewhere better than before, and sometimes you gain a sister when you thought you were losing a husband.